All right, it's time for Media Watch now. Deeptika Laurent is here with me in the studio. It's good to see you, Deeptika. We're going to start off with a story we were talking about a moment ago. This is the Philippine President, Rodrigo Duterte, got himself in a bit of a tight spot today. He used some colourful language, shall we say, to describe President Obama, or more specifically perhaps his mother. He then had to backtrack and try and apologise on that after Obama said, no thanks, we won't be having a meeting today in Laos.
Well, I'm not so convinced that it was a real apology, Laura. The thing is, he didn't seem very sincere. If you look at the wording of it, at least this is according to a Twitter user who's posted part of the statement. He says, we regret that it came across as a personal attack on Obama. So, i.e., sorry you got offended. That seems to be the message. And, on their Facebook page, Duterte's office actually says, that cussing was not directed at Obama. It was at a reporter who was reportedly annoying the president with his pesky questions. So, it's not very convincing at all, this apology. But in any case, with that scandal over, Duterte has, in his true style, he's leapt headfirst into another scandal where he's basically called... He's called the Abu Sayyaf Islamic militants, and he sort of vowed to tear apart and eat Abu Sayyaf militants. He said he promised to, quote, carve their torsos open and then eat the militants, albeit as long as he had a bit of salt and vinegar. The South China Morning Post has helpfully put together 10 of Duterte's most outrageous statements. It's what they call diplomacy Duterte style. He's insulted the UN. He's insulted the U.S. ambassador to Manila. And all after that man's called Philip Goldberg. Goldberg criticized Duterte over comments he made about wanting to rape a, quote, beautiful Australian missionary. Now, Duterte has also called the Pope a son of a after his visit to Manila caused a traffic jam. So,
that was the reason for that.
That was the reason for that. So Obama is, is really an esteemed group here right now.
I mean, he makes Donald Trump look miles, doesn't he?
And in fact, it's funny you mentioned that, because a Twitter user says, it's a blessing in disguise for the U.S. They should see they actually owe a debt of gratitude to the Philippines for showing us a little preview of what life will be like with Donald Trump as president.
A little taste. It has to be said, though, Duterte is very popular at home.
Very
controversial abroad, but
very
pretty much
popular.
loved at home.
And in fact, he's popular for those controversies abroad. The Filipinos sort of see him as somebody who's defending national pride, who's refusing to back down against big weights like the U.S. and so forth. Now, this supporter has put himself in the so-called Duterte pose. That there's a picture of him, where he's sort of leaning to the side like this. So he's emulated that. And he says, look, I don't disagree with him on some of his methods and policies. Yes, he has a problem controlling his mouth, but I'm behind him every step of the way. A Filipino is not one who stays only when things are rosy, but leaves when he feels the prick of the thorns. Now, a Twitter user, Sheila Xuan, also posted her support, saying we cannot afford to be aloof or indifferent to the miseries of the people. So there's a lot of support on his so-called war on drugs.
All right. Well, let's leave Rodrigo Duterte there for a moment and move on to something different. Over in Japan, there's been a lot of comments on social media about the Miss World Beauty pageant, which, of course, kicks off at the end of the year in the United States. And there's a lot of focus on Miss Japan at the moment.
That's right. Miss Japan, or rather Miss Japan-India, I guess, because she's actually half Japanese, half Indian.
But she lives in Japan.
She lives in
Japan. She's a Japanese citizen.
She's grown up in Japan. She considers herself, at least for this pageant, Japanese. Her name is Priyanka Yoshikawa, so she's half Japanese, half Indian. And for the second year in a row, incidentally, a mixed-race Japanese woman has won the Miss Japan crown, if you like, and has been chosen to represent Japan at the Miss World contest. When the Japan Times first reported this on their Facebook page, it sort of provoked a lot of intense debate about what Japanese national identity is. And, some of those comments were not very glorious. Some people sort of saying, mixed race people in Japan get preferential treatment. It should be a, quote, unquote pure Japanese person who's selected, so forth. There's one Twitter user who says,
because it's not known as the most multicultural society.
no,
Japan,
it's not, and it's strange that we should be seeing this debate after, given that last year another mixed race Japanese woman was crowned Miss Japan, so you'd think they sort of would be used to it.
Yeah.
This Twitter user Lizard Fufu says, we're seeing a lot more hafu. Hafu is a Japanese word for mixed race. Hafu people lately, and this person's wondering, is it a trend or a sign of times to come? Now, Adam Roberts, who's a journalist, says, her appointment could be more important for India-Japan relations than even a Modi-Abe sort of friendship. So possibly the Miss World pageant could transcend all of this sort of, debate around cultural identity. Nevertheless, it must be said there are a lot of people who have been cheering on this, step forward for diversity in Japan.
All right. Now, I've seen a lot of funny memes doing the rounds about a trial going on here in France at the moment. It's the former budget minister, Jérôme Cahuzac, the man who was supposed to be cracking down on financial corruption. He himself was caught with a offshore bank account in Switzerland. And the trial is ongoing, of course. Yesterday, he blamed it all on someone who's no longer around to defend himself.
That's right. As you said, he's in court over fiscal fraud and money laundering. And yesterday, he blamed part of these activities on a former French Prime Minister, Michel Rocard, who you might remember sadly passed away this summer.
Yes.
He said he opened those accounts in Switzerland on behalf of Michel Rocard. The problem is, obviously, Michel Rocard is not here to defend himself. It's a pretty easy defense. So the internet has taken to lampooning him with their wonderful hashtag Blame It on Rocard, which is sort of doing its rounds on Facebook and Twitter. The poor, dearly departed Rocard is being blamed for everything, like the French football team's strike during the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, where Rocard didn't open the door of the bus. Karim Benzema's sex tape also being blamed on Rocard. The sinking of the Titanic.
Yeah.
And of course, last but certainly not least, Jawad, who really is a meme in himself. He quote unquote accidentally took in Paris attackers during their siege and said he had no idea about it. And he also is making his appearance in the Blame It on Rocard hashtag.
Excellent. You got to love the internet, haven't you? They take a funny story and make it even funnier. Diptyque and Oran, thank you very much indeed.